Good evening, folks. Welcome to this October 15th Charter Review Committee meeting. We'll call to order and start with an approval of the agenda. We have the minutes from September 17th, 2018. Under old business, we're going to review bylaws. B is Article 2, Power of the City. C is Article 5, Ordinances and Resolutions. Our new business tonight is Article 3, the Mayor. Then we'll end with comments from committee members and citizens, and then we will adjourn. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as read? I have a motion from Ms. Jessica.
Second.
I have a second from Mark Clark. All those, any comments from the dais on the agenda? Any public comment? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, if you've had a chance to approve the minutes, look over the minutes from September 17th. If you need a minute, we will take one. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Walt.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Jim. Everybody good? Okay. Motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, so under our old business, we sent legal back with quite a few suggestions, changes. So we'll start with the bylaws. And has everybody had a chance to look through those? Okay. Does legal have a summary that they want to give us about what we did? If you'll take over there, Rich, go right ahead.
I will. Thank you, Mayor. Actually, this is fairly simple on the bylaws. A couple meetings back, I think in August, we initially approved our bylaws, and then it was brought to our attention that the reference to the actual committee differed from what our resolutions. There we go. How's that? I'm sorry. So just to recap that very quickly, a couple meetings back we passed our bylaws, and then it was brought to our attention that the reference to the actual committee itself differed from what the City Commission's resolution said, and I'm referring to 2018-23 and 2018-20. In that the committee should be referred to actually as the Charter Review Committee rather than the Charter Review Advisory Committee. So we just went through, removed the word advisory in reference to the committee, but to clarify, this is an advisory board. So within the bylaws, it does actually specify that even though the name is the Charter Review Committee, the role is advisory in nature, but we made that change so it's consistent with what the resolution says. So that's the only change.
Okay. All right. Any questions on that? Change of the verbiage? All right. So we need a motion to approve the change.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Wall, a second from Ms. Jessica. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, Article 2, Power of the City. We got this down to a blip, which has generally been the direction of this body to try to condense it down. Anybody have any questions, comments? Did legal do a good job getting to where we wanted it to be? Okay. If so, no one has any questions for Scott or Rich? Did you guys have anything you wanted to review with us about it?
Not on this one.
Not on
the
this
next one I do want to
Okay.
go over one thing.
I'll entertain a motion to pass Article 2, Power of the City. I have a motion from Mark Clark.
Second.
I have a second from, we'll give this one to Mark Allen. Any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Article 5 is ordinances and resolutions. Scott, did you want to review this one with us?
I did. There's one item that I wanted to bring up to you, and that relates to an item that perhaps we want to add to Article 5. And it didn't make the edits, and I just did, and I wasn't sure how you as a body wanted to handle that. What I'd like to do is hand out this section, which is known as, I numbered it as a new section 26. So let me hand that out to you right now. Now that everybody has it, what this does is, so we've tinkered with the definition of ordinances and resolutions and in section 24 and made the definitions very similar to what the Florida statute provides. We've kept the section 25, which is how you adopt an ordinance or a resolution in the city, and made that, I hope, very clear in that regard. And then we've delineated the procedure for the passage of an ordinance, which again is very dictated by Chapter 166.041 of the Florida statutes. Gesundheit. We've created the effective date, and we've retained language that makes it particular to the city of Newberry, which is the mayor's power to in effect have a sort of a veto, I guess is what you call it, and then an override procedure if the mayor doesn't sign an ordinance within 10 days that's presented to him. So it still retains the general flavor of what the city has had in the past, and that's a summary of what we did in our last meeting on those two issues. Now, one of the areas that we deleted in this version, and we made it much, much, much less complex by deleting it essentially, is a citizen-based initiative for the enactment of an ordinance. And that's the Article 5, Section 26. And what I'd like to posit to you is that if we delete that, you're taking away citizens' powers. And I think it's in a way, I'll argue both sides of that, just so you have it. There's a reason that in the existing code, it's very Byzantine as the procedure. It's very kind of hard to follow, and we've never enacted it. In the 35 years I've been here, we've never, and really it's longer than 35 years because I've been coming here since I was in just about my first day in law school. So it's really 38 years, and my partner before me was 16 years. So we're talking a long period of time. We've never had a citizen-based initiative as far as passage of an ordinance. There's a permissible way to do it, but we've never done it. And I think the reason that we don't have it, we don't have that procedure that goes on here, is because we have a 2-year term. So there's a turnover that happens all the time in the city. If you're aggrieved by something and this commission does something you really don't like, and you get your neighbors on fire about it, well, then you can go out and get a citizen petition to do something about an ordinance, which never happens, or you can vote them out of office. So that's why I don't think we really have this procedure for a citizen-based initiative. However, deleting it altogether, somebody out there may say, you know, you took away our power. I'm going to vote against this thing because you took away our power. So this is based on Bar Harbor's provision. I think it was Bar Harbor, maybe it was one other city. I'll figure out what it is right quick. It was actually Fort Myers Beach. And so this is based on what Fort Myers does. It's very simple, 25% in electric. If you want to pass an ordinance or you want to amend an ordinance or you want to repeal an ordinance as a citizen, you go get 25% of the electorate in the city to deal with it, and you can do so. You can put it on the next ballot so that you can bring the petition in front of the city commission, and if they don't do anything about it, then it has to go on the ballot. So that makes it very simple. It's not Byzantine. And you can choose to delete this provision altogether, or you can keep it in place. My recommendation is to add a Section 26 because you're not deleting the power of the citizenry in your amendment to your charter, and it makes it very simple. So my suggestion is to add that Section 26 back into the code and not delete it altogether.
If anybody's read the current, I mean, it's almost incomprehensible. I mean, you try to figure out what it means, and you get 25%, then you get to go back, then you got to go back, and you got to get a percentage. I mean, it's just, so this is 25% of the qualified electorate, not 25% of the people who voted in the last
That's right.
election.
That's right, so it's a little higher bar, so
Okay.
you're exactly right.
But once you hit that bar, you've hit it. And
That's
there's
right.
no, you take it to the commission, if the commission doesn't, it goes on the ballot. Scott, would this speak to recalls, or is this just,
This is just, no, there's a whole separate
Separate
recall
section for recall.
petition, and that's governed by Florida statute. So
Okay.
it's not recalls, this is a citizen-based initiative for an ordinance, that's what this is. And I bet you if I was around another 35 years, we still will not have ever done it.
But
Would-
arguably, if they could get 25% of the qualified electorate to sign an initiative and referendum to get an ordinance back, they should be able to get it back, because not that many people vote here.
Yeah.
So,
Good point,
I mean,
that's a good point.
I'm sure the commission would take that into
I know.
consideration.
In the election.
Jim?
Where do you propose on putting this in the final version?
It
Right
would
before
be-
the state law reference on procedures and adoption of
Yes,
emergency
Jim.
resolution?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
exactly right.
Okay.
I mean, I'm all for brevity, but I think some of the things like this where it keeps some important points about, at least for our citizens, important parts to keep in mind about what is important about our charter for them, I think it's important to keep in.
I agree. Mr. Wall?
I'm never one to remove power from our citizens, even if it's a power that's never been used. You know, we always want our citizens to have the power of control over our government. That's their role, and government's role to accept what our citizens want, for the most part, within reason. But, I'm all for adopting that, 26 into the ordinances.
Yeah, my memory was that it was, the way it was written was just incomprehensible. So we wanted to either defer to state law or make it where we could understand it. So I got a head nod for everyone. Is that all you wanted to talk about? All you needed
A
updates
motion,
on?
I'd like a motion
I
to
will
put
do.
this in.
I just want to make sure is that the only thing that you want
That's the
to
only thing on
review
Article 5, yes.
in
yes, sir.
Article 5?
Can I ask
Does the
another
commission
question?
have any questions on Article 5?
I have another
Yes,
question
Ms.
about Article
Jessica.
5. Is there a statutory provision that we have to read ordinances in full?
Yes, not in full.
Just
There's
by title?
By title. It says in the statute that the reading shall be by title or in full, and you have to do it for ordinances, you have to do it on 2 occasions.
So you don't have to be tortured to read a 7-page ordinance in full the first time?
Unless you're in the city of
There's-
Archer. City of Archer
Yeah.
does have that requirement, and we are having to do that. And that is also on the agenda, that's on their ballot to amend their ordinances or their charters, so you don't have to read. But there was probably about 2 months ago, I had about a 50-page zoning ordinance.
I heard about that.
It was torture for me and torture for them
Everyone
listening to
else?
me.
Okay, so
Mike?
somebody can make that call then at the time the ordinance is actually being read, if it's going to be so long that it can just be by title.
That's right. And
Okay.
or conversely, and really what those ordinances related to, there was charter provisions that are in the old charters. You'll find them in the city charters of many cities in Florida, and that related to literacy. You know, the populace was not nearly as, or was not anywhere close to, did not have the literacy that we have now. And so the reason was you had to read the ordinances in their entirety because of that reason. Well, it's out of date at this point.
Mr. New?
I was just going to mention, staff recommended that y'all consider that and adopt it. We couldn't get past the attorney.
Yeah. Well, and we generally read by title. There's a couple of times where we read the whole thing, and I'm trying to remember the criteria when we read budget. The budget's about the
That's
only
right.
time we read the whole thing.
And the reason we
after
do the
that,
budget, it's a good point.
That's state
that Dallas-
ordinance.
Well, there's requirements that you have to announce your millage rate, you have to announce your rollback rate, you have to tick off these things. You have to publicly announce when your second budget hearing is going to be. So there's things like that, and that's why, even though Dallas creates this script, in the past I was kind of anti the script, to be honest. But then the more I thought about it, that ensures that we get it done and we do it in the right way. So I think it's a terrific thing that all cities should adopt, actually.
I noticed the county has adopted the script as well.
Is that right?
I
did not
sat
know
through
that.
that twice. Does the board have any other questions on Article 5?
That's right, that's right.
Okay.
Hearing none, motion that would also include Section 26.
I move that we pass Article 5, including Section 26.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Jim.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Walt. Any further questions or comments, thoughts? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. All right, we will move on to new business and discuss the Article 3, the mayor.
As you can see, Mr. Mayor, I'll give some prefatory statements about this and then turn it over to Rich for any additional comments he may want to have. But as you'll see from comparing the original to where we're at now, it's in keeping with the idea of brevity and being very succinct in the overall way that we're creating this. I think Dallas and Mike had some recommendations on how they would like this to be structured, and so it keeps with it's in keeping with what their recommendations are, which were well put. If you'll remember, the Florida League of Cities had a presentation to us. They had a bunch of charters. They had sample charters that they gave to us, which are basically cities, Green Cove Springs, Live Oak, Bar Harbor, Fort Myers Beach, all these that are maybe our size or slightly bigger than us, and that have gone through this amendment process with their charters. And she gave us a number of versions. Well, that's what I have in this book right here. And not to belabor the point, but if you look at the power of the mayor, in each one of these other cities, it's very, very brief, it's very succinct. And I'm not going to read each one of them, but I'll just give you a little flavor because they're all about the same. Preside over the meetings of the council, be recognized as the head of the town government for all ceremony purposes and for purposes of administrating martial law as directed by the governor, and then the vice mayor, almost identical language, the same. And it's virtually the same thing in every one of these cities. So it's broad in the sense of it's very brief, but it says your mayor is going to be your ceremonial head. The difference is that in some cities, the mayor is elected from the city body. In almost all cities, in very many cities, I'd be interested to know how many have a structure exactly like ours, but in almost all cities, the mayor has a vote. And what that does is when the mayor has that vote, it subjects him to the sunshine laws. And we have a very unique scenario. Trenton's like us. I don't know if they're like us, but they have been like us. I think they still are. The mayor does not have a vote. And what that allows us to do is Mike can talk to Jordan, and this has gone on for not just this administration and past administrations as well. The city manager can talk to the mayor, and he can say, Mayor, I want you to go talk to Commissioner so-and-so, and I want you to tell him that this is a bad idea or a good idea or whatever it is. And in my opinion, this has been a very, very effective thing that our city does. Best example I can give to you is the Gatorback. Gatorbacks, we have a packed house, the red shirts, I think it was, and the blue shirts. And blue shirts on one side, red shirts on the other side, and there's no middle ground. It's either yes or no. Well, nobody had really had the ability to go back to the old Gatorback and the old place where it operated very successfully for years and years and years, and they finally said, hey, we want to get out of the county. Annex us, please. So we annexed them. And Jordan went back to them and said, you know, what's the problem here? Can't we resurrect this? And started brokering a deal. And I think it happened over Memorial Day, Memorial Day weekend, basically. And that thing was headed to litigation. We're going to spend a gob of money on attorney's fees. Everybody's going to be very polarized in the city. And basically, he took the Israelis and the Palestinians and said, hey, can't we make peace? And,
Well, let's
and we
not
did it.
go that far.
So it was very effective. It's a very effective tool. It's a very effective tool for us. So Mike and Dallas's suggestion is that we keep that system that we have. It's worked very well for us in the past. Let's keep that in mind. Let's make sure that mayors in the future understand that they are not administrators. They don't have governance over the employees, and so they added in for all ceremonial purposes, and they can do all that, but they are not to be the administrator of the city. That's not their purpose. That's not their function. So that's basically the summary of both the mayor and the commission, and it's also a summary of what their powers are. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Rich to see if he has any additional comments.
Nothing generally like that. As far as Section 6 is concerned, if we want to get into that, a lot of the changes that will go through Section 6 through 12 were suggested for our consideration from city staff, working with Dallas and Mike on this a bit. And so Section 6, what we've done is we've clarified that the form of government is actually a commission city manager form of government. It currently reads council manager plan. It's probably more appropriate to refer to it as a form of government rather than a plan, and we are operating with a commission rather than what's referred to as a council in other municipalities. So just for everybody's sake, in terms of clarification on the commission city manager form of government, the general idea is that the commission is going to oversee general administration, make policy, set budget, things like that. The city manager's function is to handle day-to-day business. So that's sort of what we're trying to get at Section 6 there, that change there.
All right. Does the board have any questions?
I do like seeing the removal of Section 11, which kind of cleans up powers between the city manager and the mayor for emergencies.
I had a question, and it seems like I read this and it made sense, but tonight it's not. It may just be that my eyes are crossing. But in Section 7, it says, who shall take office not sooner than 10 days and not more than 30 days following his election. Don't we swear in the next day?
Well, some of the thoughts on that, just to share that for sake of discussion, and I apologize, I stopped after Section 6. I'm happy to go through every section if everyone wants to hear that.
No, we like brevity.
Okay.
We'll throw the questions at you.
But, under the state statute, there's a 10-day period for somebody to contest an election. So one of the thoughts was, the way it reads now is that, the mayor will take office immediately. Maybe we want to consider a brief period where there's this waiting period to see if there is going to be any challenge. Another thought, just sort of logistically speaking, a lot of times when a city official's sworn in, it's nice if they have a chance to have their family in town and things like that. This gives a little bit of leeway to make some of those arrangements if there's folks coming from out of town. That was sort of the thought process, and then the other end of the spectrum is, of course, we don't want to wait too long, so we put a cap of 30 days. No real science to that, but just for sake of discussion.
I mean, we have a pretty long tradition of election on Tuesday, ceremony the very next day. And my next question was that last line, because it seems conflicting. So in one part we say the mayor can't take office sooner than 10 days before the election, and then the very last line is, or until the successor is elected and sworn into office, which could be which could be the next day. So is there a,
That line there is, if you read everything before that, shall hold the office for a term as provided for in the charter or until the successor is elected and sworn into office.
So there's continuity. So yeah,
Right.
allows for continuity.
So you can't abandon ship until,
And
So-
until a new mayor is, you know.
right, so we wouldn't be banned from holding our traditional next day swearing in. Someone wouldn't, not sooner than 10 days. Or until a successor is less than sworn in.
I was supposed to remind you to turn your mic on, and I forgot the reminder. Sorry about that, Amy. But if you can turn it on and then off when you get ready to speak, and that way she gets it on the
That's the way she gets on.
on record, and it can be broadcast.
If we start getting the feedback, it's because we got too many of them on at one time. I just want to be clear. So, you know, if someone wants to contest and say, well, wait a minute, you can't swear them in for 10 days.
then during that 10-day
Says in the
period,
charter.
the current mayor continues to sit in office and conduct city business during that 10-day period.
So it'd be like a presidential election. They're nominated and elected, November.
Yeah, that's not-
Until January.
That's not the issue. I mean, I think the issue for me is the tradition of having it on the very next day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can decide anything we want. We can be like the president, the county doesn't swear in until January 1st. So you got, you know, almost a little over a month, you know, but this would be a divergence from the way we've always done. It's been election on Tuesday, we swear on Wednesday. We did change, I want to say it was with my election as mayor, and we moved it because it was 12 o'clock on Wednesday the next day, and we moved it to the night so that families could come. So I just want to be clear with the board, this would be a change from tradition. Now, just tradition isn't necessarily an end-all, be-all reason to continue, but I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that.
I'm with you. I think if you get elected, you swear in, just like we do our commissioners.
Have we
You
ever
get-
had a contested race?
Well, we always swear in the very next day.
But still, even after we swear the
Yeah.
next day, has anything ever been contested?
Oh, yeah, yeah, we've had tie votes, which is then the decision, you'll see in our charter that the decision is made by lot, and so we looked up in Black's Law Dictionary and case law, what does that mean? And it says by drawing straws is basically the way, or flip of a coin. So I think in our current charter, we say flip of a coin, just
We
because
do.
that's.
We just had to look it up.
We have had tie votes, we've had votes that are so close that are based upon absentee ballots, and that changes the election. And we've had litigation over that, Walt, that we've actually gone to court, and we've won the person who received the most. It was Freddie Wormack received the most votes in that election, but we were able to canvass and certify the results. So yes, it does happen.
And
Believe it or not, it does.
Mister.
There've been lots of election controversies that people have, one had a second election, come in, resigned, new special election, all kinds of shenanigans.
Mr. New.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just since staff kind of brought this forward, strictly because of the question of tradition, it used to be first thing Wednesday morning. There have been some logistical issues as we try to schedule that, and the awareness that state law says that anybody can contest the election for 10 days. And thought, well, if we suggested this language and if the voters of Newberry felt that it was acceptable, it would allow us not to seat a mayor prior to learning that the election is or is not contested. So that was the primary driving force behind it. Is just it could be awkward to sit a mayor and then have it overturned, as opposed to moving forward. Whether whether the election is going to be contested or not. So
Okay.
just
We have
that simple.
a board member joining us, Naeem, just to catch you up, Naeem. We are in Article 3 under new business. We're going over the mayor. In Article 3, Section 7, the conversation is a clause that's been added, that this is hereby created, the office of mayor of the city of Newberry should be elected by the qualified electors of the city and the manner provided in this charter, who shall take office not sooner than 10 days and not more than 30 days following his or her election. That's a new clause. Traditionally, we have had the elections on Tuesday. We've sworn in on Wednesday. State law provides a 10-day window to file a complaint or a grievance, so staff is suggesting that we mirror state law. And I think Dallas has a comment as well.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. In addition to the 10-day window, state law provides an election law that if the difference between the vote getters is within a certain percentage, I think it's 0.5% or 0.25%, it triggers automatic recounts, in which case the election couldn't be certified until the end of those recounts. So another reason for the 10 days is to allow that if we did need to have recounts automatically triggered, there'd be enough time to complete those recounts before we swore in the mayor.
And I'm assuming that the language in the mayor, the language in the commission section would just mirror it. So that wouldn't be, we'd have two swearing in ceremonies. It would be 10 days for mayor, 10 days for commission, and it would be 10 days after the election that you would hold this ceremony.
Correct. All the same reasons for holding off on the mayor swearing in would be the same for the commissioner swearing in.
Okay, so does the board feel like they have a good idea of why staff has suggested this, Ms.
Yes,
Bonnie?
I wholeheartedly agree with the reasons why. My only hesitation with it is depending on when the commission is sworn in, could there possibly be a commission meeting with a contentious vote
Dire ramifications.
between the person, you know what I'm trying to say, the election is held this week.
A lame duck commission.
There's a vote on Monday about a hot button issue, and the new commission is not sworn in for a few days after. That's my only.
Well,
concern.
technically, the meeting that we do the swearing in is a public meeting, and if the majority of the commission wanted to, they could put whatever that contentious item is on that agenda. So I'm not sure that moving I'm just saying it's technically plausible or technically possible that that would happen. If it's the majority of the commission that's going out, they could say, well, we're going to have a public meeting, before we do the swearing in, we want to put this agenda item on. So I think the 10 days probably is more, because now you might have a Monday night meeting, it's already on the agenda, you wouldn't have to have them push it, so I think that's a pretty good suggestion, or a pretty good concern you're bringing up. But it is possible, am I right, Elsa, they could put a meeting as agended?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, on the special
be
commission
fairly-
meeting, the commission could just vote whatever they wanted. Now the new commission could come in and undo all those votes. Also, within 10 days, our election always falls the day after a regular commission meeting. So 10 days following that, there is not another regular commission meeting.
Okay.
But it
As
would
the
be.
mayor
That was
said,
my
they
main
could call
concern.
one, but-
That was my main concern,
Yeah.
but I agree with the 10-day thing, and if it's state statute and they have those 10 days, I mean, why set ourselves up to have to deal with a bunch of rigmarole if we can go ahead and put it in here? I mean, I don't think that we're so overflowing with people on the swearing-in days that going against tradition is really gonna rock the boat
It's really just
to the
family.
citizenry. I mean, I don't think.
How long does a
My
recount
opinion.
take?
Well, it depends on,
If there's 300 voters,
it depends on 300 or 2,000 voters. It also,
Should be able to count pretty quick.
state law requires that for within 0.5%, it's a machine recount, where you're literally just running the ballots back through a machine. If it's within 0.25%, I believe it's a manual recount, where you have to have people hand count all the ballots. The biggest time in that would be getting it prepared. State law says that in a recount, you have to have law enforcement on site to watch the ballots. So we'd have to work those details out. When I worked for the county, it usually took us a couple of days to start a recount process.
Ms. Gale, I
Well,
think
there's
you
a
were
lot more
reaching for the
voters.
mic. No, you're good. Okay. Any other questions or comments about inserting the 10-day? You feel like you're up to speed, Naeem?
I'm less worried about the 10-day than the 10 to 30-day span, especially going from traditionally an immediately post-election tradition to what might be a month afterwards. I just don't know how well received that is going to be by people voting on these changes.
I mean, and is there a way we could enter a word? Because in my mind, I was picturing that it would be on that 10-day mark. You know, but it doesn't necessarily say that it's going to be on that 10-day mark. So, I mean, and I guess the window is if that 10-day, I mean, what would 10 days always, if it's a Tuesday, 10 days would always be the next Thursday or Friday? Well, you don't want to do it on Friday. That's terrible. So,
All I can speak to is from my time with the supervisor of elections office, that window was built in, so in case the election was contested, you could not seat your mayor or your commission while the lawsuit was going on. However, when I worked for the county, the city of Gainesville was sued in their mayoral election, and they sat the mayor during the lawsuit because the charter said that they had to seat the mayor during the lawsuit. So,
Mr.
You
Walt,
haven't-
So how I'm reading this is, on that 10-day period, if there is nobody contesting the election, we seat our mayor and the commission when we get to that point. If we have, somebody contest within that 10-day period.
it gives you
I mean,
20 more days.
It gives them 20 days to rile things up before we can actually seat those newly elected or incumbent.
So, Dal, how do you see this playing in your mind? We have an election, right? And we just had a meeting the Monday before. Now, we don't have another meeting for 2 weeks. So at what point and who decides what day we're going to swear in the commission? Because you have to wait 14 days to get the commission back to vote on when they're going to swear in. Does the mayor who just lost his seat unilaterally?
that is a good question,
Pick.
Mr. Mayor. I haven't really thought about it. I don't know if anybody else did.
Well, it is an interesting question. I would
Thank you very much.
suggest that it's the exact same issue, though, with the word immediately as well. I mean, what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean the very next day, but that's how it's traditionally been done. But, the same issue could be present in that situation, too. That doesn't necessarily tell you I have an answer for that, but, I mean, that issue is always going to be in play, I think, no matter how we word that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a clause that we could fit in that would sort of trigger the action. Because if I've just won office, I mean, my first question is going to be, okay, when do I take, when do I take the office? Well, we'll get back to you on that. We got to have a meeting and we got to figure out, when that happens.
Would it be possible to put language in that says the mayor and commission shall be seated not sooner than 10 days, not after however many days, provided no a contest of the election has not been filed or there's no challenge of the election?
What we do, Dallas, is that if, and this is what we've had in the past, we've had the challenge, and the legal side of it lasts maybe months, so, and the city has to go on, and the case that I'm thinking about, it was a 3-vote spread between the mayor and the challenger, and it was and the challenger won on the votes that were cast, and I think it was back at the old municipal building, and the mayor, Freddie Wormack, won based upon the votes that were cast plus the absentee ballots. So we canvassed it. We sat at the canvassing board. We did all the recount. We did all those things. And we swore him in immediately after the election, and then we progressed with city business, and there was a contest, and we went in front of Judge Sanders, and Judge Sanders said no, the count was accurate and it's appropriate, and I'm going to certify the election on behalf of Freddie Wormack as your mayor. And so we did it, but that probably didn't happen, Dallas, until 6 months after the election. So we just went on ahead, plowed through it, and said, this is what the voters selected, and unless you can say there was fraud in some way or that somehow that there was a skullduggery went on, it is what it is. That was the gist of it.
Well,
Skullduggery.
what about this? Because my other concern here is, this happened to me when I was first sworn in as a commissioner. The meeting that we were sworn in as commissioner, the very next item was one of the largest contracts the city had ever been awarded. And so the night before the election, I said, well, you know, I've never read that contract because I'm not a sitting commissioner, and if I win, I'm going to have to vote on it the very next day at that 12 o'clock meeting. So part of my concern in not being clear here is, you know, if there's a contentious meeting and a decision that has to be made, and, you know, no one is being forthright, maybe I'm very upset I've been unseated, and so I'm going to try to push it the whole 30 days, and I'm saying, well, you're not going to read that, or you're not going to be prepared. Could we just say who shall take office on the 10th day, but not more than 30 days out? Is there a way to word that where it's triggered on the 10th day automatically? If there's a contest, you got another 20 days to figure that out. 10 days after.
You can structure it however you want.
On a weekday, right, on a weekday, no more than 10 days.
How about something like 10 days, not longer than 30 days, or I should say, not on the 10th day, but, or otherwise as soon as practical thereafter, or something like that, but no longer than 30 days. So then we know, okay, we got to use some kind of common sense here. We can't schedule this on a Saturday or a Friday or something like that, but
Right.
maybe the next business day.
That way there's something that says this is the realm that we want. It may be 11 days to get it on a Monday, or 12 days if we got to get it through a weekend. But that's, you know, we want it in that 10-day range as much as humanly possible. Unless there's a contest.
So what I'm trying to articulate, on the 10th day or as soon thereafter as is practicable, but no longer than 30 days.
But no longer than 30 days.
Because we need to seat our elected officials so the city can continue running its business.
Not to add to the another layer of confusion here, but I am looking at the statute on the 10 days. And just because we get to day 10 doesn't necessarily mean that we know for sure whether or not we're in the clear. The lawsuit would be filed with the circuit court on within that 10-day period, but then service has to be accomplished after that. So unless you have somebody sitting there watching the docket, which we probably would be looking at that pretty carefully, we may not know that there is going to be a lawsuit until day 11, 12, 14.
But just like Scott said, if there's a lawsuit, that's going on for months.
That's right.
That's going on for months. So the 10 days doesn't really get us out of that. It just gives staff the time to do a recount, in my mind, and maybe at least know if there's something egregious and a judge can, you know, jump in.
When does the contest, if somebody's contesting it, when does that happen?
Well, they have 10 days to put it in.
So.
We may not
so
know
take
about it.
office immediately unless otherwise contested.
Well, it gives them 10 days.
Even immediately, though, immediately could mean the next day for you, but I could say immediately is a week from now.
Yeah, that's where we're at
I
now.
hate the government.
Yeah.
But
I mean-
I like the verbiage that you're using, you know, ideally, we want to do it on the 10th day. Definitely no more than 30, but we've got to allow a little bit of wiggle room in case there is something.
Right.
In case that skullduggery occurs.
Right. What'd you say, Naeem?
So is this business days or is this?
Well, that's the as soon as possible.
November, you got
Right.
Thanksgiving in there, you got, so this
Yeah.
could go even longer.
Well, it's 10 days. It would be 10 days.
This is November election.
No, we're talking about April, just April. We're just talking about our election. All right. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Business days or we talking about regular calendar days?
I mean,
I think we're
no,
talking calendar days,
Calendar
which is
days.
the Friday before
Right.
the next commission meeting.
it's
Let's
calendar
clarify.
days.
It's calendar days, correct?
Right.
Right, which is the Friday before a commission meeting, which is, right.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And that's
So,
when they have to actually file to protest, correct? Yeah.
and we may not know that they filed, but that would give the citizens a window to file. And hopefully, if they really think they have a good case, they would be communicating with the city staff saying, wait a minute, you guys should know this. Okay.
And to be confident, if anybody's gonna protest, you're gonna know during election that they're not having favors with you anyway, so.
I mean, generally, I think it's within 2 or 3 days that they've said something. I mean, sometimes it takes a while for the complaint to kind of percolate and then, or to articulate and say that, okay, that actually was, I don't think that really was fair, and I want someone to look at that.
10 days
Well, it's going to be 10 days.
to file.
That's by state statute. They got 10 days to file, right? So we're going to give a 10-day window, or as close to that as humanly possible. Rich is going to bring us back some verbiage
Yep.
to that. So even if I would suggest that, I have a couple more questions. You guys may have more questions now too, but before we vote on this, we let you guys make the motion to send those changes. Does anybody, I have more questions, but if anybody else has thought of some, I'll hold off. Okay. My other question was in section 8, the qualification of the forfeiture of office. It says, if the mayor shall cease to possess the qualifications required herein, she shall forthwith forfeit his or her office. Is that any of the criteria? Say if I move out of the city for a very brief period of time, is that a forfeit of office?
If you no longer reside in the city, yes.
So if I don't have any residence in the city of Newberry, okay. Even if what's the mechanism that someone would have to say, well, wait a minute, I know someone wasn't in office or wasn't in the city limits. How could you prove that? I mean, I'm going to have the same question when it comes to the 6-month residency, because I know we've had that issue before about proving residency. So let's say I move out and I'm in an unannexed part of the city for 6 months, and then someone says, "Oh, that's not actually in the city of Newberry. Newberry is a Swiss cheese city." And I move back in. Have I forfeited the office by virtue of having left and not holding the qualifications?
The residency is a state of mind. It's very, very hard to prove that I'm a resident or not a resident, for instance. And there's some documentary proof that reflects your residency. Your driver's license. Where's the address on your driver's license? Where are you registered to vote? There's other documentary things that kind of indicate to us that where your residency is. But when I qualify for office, typically I'm signing under oath and penalties of perjury that I'm a resident of the state of Florida and the city of Newberry. So that's the criteria. And your clerk, your Judy Rice, is not the arbiter of whether I'm telling the truth when I sign that document under penalties of perjury that I'm a resident of. So some people say, well, that qualifying, the city clerk is really the tester of that. She's not. She's merely administering the...
She's taking your oath.
She's taking the oath, and if you're certifying that, and I'll give you examples, and this happens a lot where they have districts in other cities, and I'm not a resident. I want to run for the seat that is in district number 5, and I'm not a resident, but my buddy Rich lives in district 5, so I'm going to, Rich, will you rent me a room for a few months while I'm running for election, and I'll pay you a check to rent the room. Are you cool with that? Yeah, that's okay. $100 a month. All right, here you go. Am I a resident of District 5 now? Well, wait a minute. You got a homestead over here in District 4, and your driver's license says District 4, and you're a registered vote in District 4, but now you're saying you're in District 5? I probably win that case, believe it or not, because it's such a state of mind affair when you're talking about residency. Again, let me give you another perfect example. I'm in the Army, and I get stationed in Afghanistan, and I decide that I want to run for city commission in the city of Newberry. Where's my residency? I'm living in Afghanistan. I'm waking up and showering and working all day in Afghanistan, but I'm a resident of the city of Newberry. And if I qualify and I want to run, then I would be able to run even though I may be stationed in Afghanistan. So residency is really a state of mind, and that's a situation you're going to win, particularly if you have documentary proof, driver's license, voter ID, that sort of thing.
Okay, Mr. Mark.
I was just gonna say, it says bona fide resident, what is,
That's right.
I mean, what is-
That's right. What is a bona
Bona
fide
fide
resident?
resident.
Yep.
So I guess what
Forever.
I'm hearing is there's no real way, because, I mean, this would, for a lot of the contests we've had, it's kind of centered on this language right here. And so there's really no way that we can shore this up to ensure that people live here when they run. We just have to let that be. And the process right now is it's up for other citizens to initiate the protest within that 10-day window and say, wait a minute, that person didn't live, and then that citizen has to take the onus of proving it in a court of law. It wouldn't have anything to do with the city.
Exactly right.
All we did was take someone's oath that they said that they did this. They believe they live here. Did we ever come across any language, any other city able to figure out a clause, a catch to help with this, or it's just
Gainesville has the
state of mind?
exact same language. Commissioner Hayes Santos just spent, I think it was like $28,000 on litigation proving up that he was a resident of the district that he's running for. He won the case, and he said, well, Judge, I should be entitled to get my attorney's fees back. And the judge said, there's no mechanism for it. I'm sorry. I mean, you know, you won and all that sort of thing, but my memory of it is something like that. It
Something
might
like
not
that.
have been 28,000, but it was
Yeah.
a significant amount of money that he spent and won the case. But the case was brought in good faith, is what my memory of it was with the court, and so he just had to prove up his residency, and he in fact won the case, kept his seat on the city of Gainesville.
That's
So
my
it's that
memory
kind
as
of
well.
thing that you have to. It's up to a citizen to do that. The city's position is not to contest. If you sign under oath that I'm a bona fide resident of the state of Florida, and the city of Newberry, that's really not our position to contest that.
Mark.
Scott, I reckon you would really have to say that you would have to live in the city limits of Newberry. If you took this out, you'd have to do something that would hold somebody absolutely accountable where they're at.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, that's my questions for this section. Anybody come up with any other questions while we were having that conversation? Okay, hearing none, does the public have any questions? You can't ask any questions. Okay, so the appropriate motion would be to send this back to legal with just the section 7 verbiage that we came up with to bring it back to us at the next review, and we would just be able to read it and see if they got it right, and then move that right along into old business. Do I have that motion? I have a motion from Ms. Bonnie. I have a second from Mr. Ames. Is that motion clear enough, Rich? Or
That is.
You're with our verbiage. Okay, any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We're on to committee member comments. Jim? Ms. Gale? Ms. Bonnie? Ms. Jessica? Mr. Mark? Mr. Walt?
Absolutely. I just wanted to congratulate my son for making it through Marine Boot Camp in Paris Island.
Here.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
He is
Good
a
job.
United States Marine, and he'll be going to a Marine Combat School, and then he'll be off to music school up in Virginia Beach. So I think that's really awesome. I'm real proud of him.
Absolutely.
Should be.
Active duty won't stay
Yeah.
active duty.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not reserves. He's
Staying right in there and going there.
That's great.
it's going to be a career for him.
Mr. Mark? Alan? You have any comments for the committee? No? Mr. Naeem?
I apologize for being late, but I just ask that you guys keep the panhandle in your thoughts and prayers, because I'm working in this business right now, and the calls that I get, so many people only have a slab of concrete to go home to. Everything's gone. They lost everything. So you can volunteer. If you serve. But yeah, keep the city of Mexico Beach, Port St. Joe, Panama City in your thoughts.
Naeem, did you see Cilantro's up in the
Cilantro's up. PB&Q. That was my comment, was that the city is running a hurricane relief effort. The fire station is a drop-off point. I will be taking a trailer load of supplies up there as long as the fire station gets full, I'll make weekend runs to drop it off. So if you can help spread that word.
Tin Can's also running.
Tin Can is up there. Tin Can has partnered with the city on this. At the bottom of this flyer, you'll see the list of community partners that have come together to do this relief effort. The high school is in. I'll give you a sneak peek. We're going to try to have a charity concert here pretty soon. More to come on that, but hopefully everybody will come out and support. So you drop it off at the fire station. We'll put it in the ambulance bay. I'll swing up there, pick it up, and take it up there wherever it's needed. So, Ms. Jessica?
Actually, I know I said I had no comment, but I want to add, there are also families that are coming into our community.
Thank you, yes.
In Airbnbs, and I expect that since the schools and the infrastructure is destroyed up at the Panhandle, that we'll be seeing more. So keep in mind that some of this charity will also be needed in our community as these people are displaced and need somewhere to go.
I have 2 families that I know are here already. One has a 10-year-old. The family that it will be arriving either tomorrow or the next day has 2 kids. So same thing, clothes, all that kind of stuff. So my plan was just to keep in contact with the folks who are letting them stay at their homes or at their. I know one is staying in a pool house, one is staying in the house. So if you know of anybody, all the donations will come. We'll just find out what they in particular need, and we'll make sure we peel off some of those and get them to them. That's right, Mark.
Somebody like that coming to our community, let's get it personal up front, call and say you need $100. And we'll
Yeah.
go directly to that child.
Well, and I think
Give
that
kid what they need, not go through a system of boxes.
when they get here and we figure out exactly what it is they need,
U-Haul.
they'll communicate. And I think gas cards, Publix cards,
Yeah.
those kinds of things are great. So
Kids need stuff right away to
yeah,
put them in
yeah. And kudos to the families that are taking in families. That's an amazing thing. But what, Newberry never lets me down. The 4-H club took a huge trailer of supplies up there 2 days ago. Cilantro's is up there feeding people just like they did during what was the one that came through? Irma, right?
Your former city employee,
Yes.
your electrician, Doug Fowler's already there with a crew
Well,
from the watch order.
So
So,
kudos
lot
to
of
everybody.
help
Kudos to everybody.
Yep.
Public comment. Was that what you were going to talk about, Mike? Good job. Hearing none, we are adjourned.